Broadcasting live from the Business RadioX studios in Phoenix, Arizona, it's time for Phoenix Business Radio, spotlighting the city's best businesses and the people who lead them.
Welcome, everyone, to the Learnish Show, broadcasting live to you today from the Phoenix Business RadioX studios in Tempe, Arizona. I'm your host, Deborah Hildebrand.
And I'm your co-host and producer, Lauren Jenny, and we are here to celebrate Women in Agile.
So one of my passions is to help young girls who want to have a career in STEM. This show is a big part of how we get there because as we highlight women who are doing amazing things in Agile, we create role models for young women to look up to and emulate. So we're really excited today to welcome Maria Matarelli, a certified Scrum trainer and CEO of Formula Inc. She is an international business consultant, experienced Agile coach, and certified Scrum trainer who consults and trains companies on reaching true agility. And welcome to Patty Aluskewicz, the founder of Agile Mindset Consulting. She is a Scrum Master, Agile coach and consultant, and a professional educator. Thank you, Maria and Patty, for joining us today.
Thank you. Great to be here. Yes, it's a pleasure to both have you here, and I'm excited to start our discussion. So, Maria, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got started in your career, and what you do now?
Yeah, thank you. So when I started, I think I have to go back to the beginning. I worked 3 jobs to pay my way through college, started working when I was 15. And I remembered that I always wanted to be successful, but I never really knew what kind of career I wanted to define me as a person. So it was this huge unknown in my mind. And one of the jobs that I had as I was going through college was working at a very large company where we started doing project management. So Caterpillar, Fortune 100 company, huge projects, huge budgets, the big yellow tractors, off-highway trucks. And they started using Six Sigma, which is a lean approach, and looking at how to streamline processes, reduce defects, and all of that. And then after college, when I graduated, I worked at State Farm Insurance corporate headquarters for 5 years. So that was their systems technology department. Now, it's not that IT project management was this grand passion of mine in life, but it seemed to be a good area to go from the work that I had done for my jobs going through college. I was like, wow, I'm pretty good at this. Let me do more of that. So from there, became a project manager. That's where I discovered Agile. We began using the Scrum framework. I became a certified Scrum Master. And fast forward, I just remember I always wanted more than just to work in a job. And I remember sitting in a cubicle wondering, is this what my life is now? I work in this cubicle until the end of, until I retire. And I started speaking at conferences in order to just get more awareness in the industry and do something above and beyond. And I think that really opened up doors. So since then became a certified Scrum trainer. And I've also co-founded the Agile Marketing Academy and Personal Agility Institute with initiatives to take Agile outside of IT. And we've been pioneering some incredible results with people and practitioners around the world.
Wow, that's incredible to hear. And I can't wait for you to talk more about that. But let me also ask Patty, how did you start off in the Agile community and what is your career like now? A little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, so I started off as a science teacher. So science, data, numbers, experimentation is part of who I am and who I've always been. And I started out there working in the public school system and decided that I no longer wanted to run my classroom as a top-down management type situation. So I started looking into a more student-centered classroom. And at this point now, I realized I was doing what I would consider very similar to Scrum and Agile in the context of the public school system. I went on and got my certification to be a Montessori teacher, which is truly Agile education, but then ended up kind of pivoting my career into business. So developing business and bringing my Agile skill set to helping that business manifest. And, of course, part of that is project management. Started to develop custom software for the business. And it kind of just took off from there. Currently, I'm a Scrum Master and an Agile coach at a major financial institution. But I also have a side business called Agile Mindset Consulting. And I truly consider myself an Agile career consultant. So I want to help people that are new to Agile and Scrum learn and develop the skills to make that successful transition into that very new foreign environment I also support companies with training and coaching and process consulting to help them support their new team members, whether it's their current team or onboarding new folks. So my career has been across many different industries. And now working in the adult world, I see how starting the agile way of working is so important when kids are young, getting that process down. So when they go into the working world, that they're much more successful in that agile environment. So one of the goals of my business is to give a voice to agile education, as well as financially support educational institutions that are helping make that shift in society.
Wow, you both are very inspiring, and I can't wait to get this conversation started. So Maria, how did you get started in Agile? How were you able to advance your career in Agile?
Yeah, thank you for that question. It first started, I was working at CAT and they said, oh, we need you to get this process mapping software in your computer and help with these Six Sigma projects. I'm like, okay. So I'm like, I have no idea what this is, but let me do it. And then I went through the green belt training and so started learning more about lean, started going through the DMAIC and the DMEDI process. And it was interesting. And I was like, okay, wow, my mind works well this way. So, what is the current as is process? Let's map out the process flow of the to be future optimized process. And so we started looking at efficiencies in that way. Similar, when I was working with State Farm, I was managing projects. And one day I got an email and said, you need to attend the Scrum Master training class. We need you to be a certified Scrum Master. And I'm like, what is that? Like, what is this thing that I've never heard of? And so I had no idea out the gate. And I just went to the training class. And again, my mind was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense in how we're planning. Instead of planning the whole project up front and then trying to get everything done and things change all the time. And it's a year long and we're off on our budget. We're off on our milestone deadlines. Oh, we'll plan in an iterative fashion, agile. Oh, that's so much more logical. So it started off with me just being told, go take this training. We need your help on this project. And so as I started to discover that, one of the biggest differentiators for me was I noticed that most everyone around me didn't want to do anything different than their day job of what they've done. A lot of people were resisting change. And so I looked at that as an opportunity. I was fresh out of college and I started to notice that all the people around me seemed to be doing less work, but were getting paid quite a bit more money than me, like almost double what I was making. And I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? Like the value that I am contributing is immense. My first projects out of college were the enterprise server release, Windows and Unix server upgrades. And that was a $3 million budget. I'm like 22 years old managing these projects, and we're looking at streamlining them. And I just came off of all these Six Sigma projects at Caterpillar. So I knew my mind's thinking in more of this lean way. And I had great help from my team as we looked at how to replan it from 2 releases a year to 3, streamline the process, offshored the work so we could free up our on-site people for more strategic work. And we reduced the annual budget from $3 million to $1.5 million annual residual cost savings. And so I'm like, okay, I seem to know how to do this. And you had some great support from my team. I'm like, okay, well, this makes a lot more sense. And so as I'm looking at this, I'm looking around, I'm like, I just saved the company $1.5 million every year. And I was told I could get 5% increase on my salary. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm no mathematician, but I did the math. And at 5% increase every year, it would have taken me 10 years to get up to the dollar amount I turned down from another job the year before. But they said, oh, if you do a great job, you can work your way up, right? And so it was then that I realized the system was broken. Like no matter how good I did, I was stuck in at the rate I was hired in, and they wanted to stair step me up little by little. And I thought that's not going to work for me. So the next year, I actually, when my performance review was getting ready to come up, I actually went and interviewed with a bunch of companies. And I showed, hey, here's what I've been able to do on projects. I was able to fly through the interviews. I had 3 job offers on the table for almost double my salary. So when that next series came around for performance reviews, I was like, hey, I'd like you guys to match these offers, please. And they're like, oh, we can't do that. That's like $40,000, $50,000 more. And it's like, well, okay, if not, then I'm just going to take these offers because I can see what I'm worth in the industry. And I actually walked out of that meeting and I said, let me know if you want me to give a 2 weeks notice or if you want me to pack up everything from my desk and escort me off the client site today. Now that took guts, right? But I had nothing to lose because I actually learned how to manage projects correctly, was very good at it, And I knew what my value was in the industry. So as a risk I had nothing to lose, was willing to take. So they told me, Maria, we just hired 10 new people. We need you to train them up. Please don't quit. And so I was like, all right, fine, I'll stay. And so I stayed there. And that's when I realized, like, in order to get ahead in your career, you have to do things that other people aren't willing to do. You have to do something extra than the bare minimum. And so that's when I started getting involved with like my local project management institute chapter. I became their VP of operations for 2 years. I helped bring Agile to that chapter. And I looked at all the people I worked with, and none of them wanted to learn Agile because it was different. It was change. It was uncomfortable. It was a new trick that the old dogs had to start to like, well, wait a minute. No, that's not what we're used to, right? And so like you can teach, I think anybody can learn a different approach and can shift how they're working. And it's not that complicated, but people just have this resistance. And so I said, you know what? I decided that day I was going to become an expert in the thing that no one else wanted to learn. No one wanted to take the time to learn this Agile approach. I was like, I'm going to dive headfirst into it. And by doing that, what I was able to do was actually become so valuable. I'm leading free lunch and learns for everybody else. I was the go-to person for Agile. And that quickly I became somebody that people wanted to talk to in the organization. And so from there, I started looking at speaking at conferences, which at first I was super nervous and didn't feel comfortable doing, but I pushed myself out of the comfort zone to do that. And so by getting involved with other groups, nonprofit professional development groups, that's one thing above the bare minimum I did for my job. By starting to speak at conferences, that was another one step above the bare minimum. And I feel like that was able to set me apart. And then starting to speak at these different conferences helped me to build a name in the community. And then I eventually went on to apply to become a certified Scrum trainer from there.
That's an awesome beginning. and I love that you talked about how, you picked this niche and you just like made yourself known for it. I know so many women that have done that and have been able to really succeed faster than, just doing the bare minimum, like you were talking about. So that's awesome. That was a great background.
Right. And noticing your value, as women, the imposter syndrome, all that, noticing that you can do this, you are capable fully of that. So Patty, jumping now to, more into agility and agile, what is the popularity around agile? Why are companies and their employees transitioning to agile?
Yes, that's the $1 million question, right? Hopefully. Agile and Scrum has been around for decades. And I think the concepts were not born with the Agile Manifesto. I mean, they've been around since, Silicon Valley and HP in the 70s and 80s and Toyota. But I think because the world is speeding up and it's speeding up faster and faster and faster, companies are starting to realize that they need to keep up. And, it can be this hamster wheel, but, the tech industries are setting the precedent and the example, and everybody that's dependent on those industries are then forced to keep up. So it's this constant speed up and speed up and speed up and speed up. But, the other thing, and I always think of the famous example, Blockbuster, but there's a few other companies out there that were left behind and they refused to change because they didn't buy into what everybody else was saying around them. They lost their opportunity. And I think that companies are now starting to see both of those examples as, well, we better jump on board with Agile. We better jump on board with Scrum. To bring up COVID, this was a huge wake-up call for everybody that, it seemed overnight that we were forced to rethink everything that we were doing. And if we couldn't do that, well, we would be the next Blockbuster, right? We'd be left behind or go out of business. So I think companies have gotten this message of Agile really loud and clear that they need to do this to keep up. Competitive advantage is a good way to put it. I don't think it's going away. I think it's constantly changing form, but this iterative way of working and responding to the customer is really incredibly important.
Yeah, totally agree. It's not going anywhere. It's not a trend. So yeah,
it's not. Yeah, it's not a fad, and I think people think it's this next fad, but it's been around for a long time. It has proven results. So it isn't going anywhere. It's just, we've got to jump on board. We can't be left behind. And let's do it now.
Yeah. I mean, so I run a training company, an agile training company as well. And so I just see so many companies coming at us wanting to learn this agile thing, right? And it's amazing. It's a good time to be an agile.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it is. So Maria, I have a question. So what is possible with agile?
Ooh, so much. I love this question. And I love how Patty was talking about how, companies, we need to be able to have agility and expect and adapt to stay relevant, and especially in the market today and so many outside impacts. We've been exploring agile in a variety of different ways. I believe the way I've been able to achieve all the things I've done in my career has been through applying agile to my life. It's literally applying that. When I wanted to become a professional speaker, I went to Toastmasters, a professional speaking organization. I created a task board and I used an agile approach to get through all of the speaking speeches. And then there's a communication track and a leadership track, and do all the projects needed for the leadership track. And there were people that had been in the group. It was Extreme Toastmasters in Chicago, right downtown. And there were people that had been in the group for like years, if not 5 to 10 years. I had never gotten through their 10 speeches or any of the additional programs. And I had my visualization in my task board, was using an agile approach to manage it. And within a couple of years, got distinguished Toastmaster, like so much faster than other people, just by visualizing the work, having the clear goal and achieving it. And so when I started to look at agile applied outside of IT, it started when I brought on a director of business development. It was Nick Cementa in Chicago. And I hired him and I was like, Nick, you got to come to our training class and see what it is we do, right? So he came to one of our CSM classes and he walked out of there. He was like, Maria, could you apply this stuff to marketing? It's like, of course you could. Yeah, agile can be applied to anything, right? And so he started experimenting with our clients. And the first company that we worked with got over 300% increased revenue in 6 months and over 780% increased revenue in a year. And I was blown away. I was like, Nick, what did you do? He's like, I just did the agile stuff you taught me. Like, yeah, but what part? Because this is like incredible results. Like, how do we replicate that? So we launched a case study program and we invited people from a variety of industries to join. And the first person to join, it was a $5,000 to go through the training and coaching program. His first agile marketing campaign returned over $30,000. I was like, all right, Nick, we are onto something. We need to figure out what's repeatable and put that into some kind of documented formula. And so that's what is currently the curriculum for the Agile Marketing Academy today. It's in our Certified Agile Marketing Specialist course. We've led this class around the world from Singapore, Shanghai, Thailand, India, and throughout the US. The first class we did in DC, we had Capital One attend. Class in Shanghai was with McDonald's. So it's like, okay, so the biggest companies in the world are recognizing that we need to apply Agile, not just in the traditional application of IT, but beyond that for greater results. Fast forward a little bit, I was connecting with another Agile trainer in Switzerland, Peter Stevens, and he was like, hey, Maria, I'd like to get your thoughts on this idea of Agile applied outside of work to your life. I've been experimenting with the thing I'm calling personal agility. I was like, yeah, Peter, of course you can apply Agile to your life. That makes sense. And as we talked a little bit more, he asked me this question. He said, what really matters? And when I actually stopped to think about it, I realized that nothing that I thought that mattered at all. And when I started to look at the concepts, I was like, Peter, this is brilliant. And it's just slightly different from, and obviously, if you apply Agile to your life, you can get results. It's what I've done like for years. But when you start to look at sustainable pace, right? Many of our teams struggle with that. It's applying Agile right out the box. It can work, but we made a couple adjustments when we look at the personal agility system. And it's about looking at what really matters. And instead of limiting your work in progress to increase throughput, looking at limiting what really matters itself, right? Like what are the high level initiatives in a holistic view of your life? And so we've had people around the world using the personal agility, so just Agile in their lives, and over the last 4 or 5 years, and the case studies are absolutely incredible. We have a guy from Colorado who was a consultant and finishing projects maybe 24% on time. Now they're achieving over 74% of projects on time, just by applying the personal agility system to get clarity on what really matters, limit the focus, and then have the visibility and the priorities map to track the results. We had a guy named Walter from Switzerland, who his company was about to go bankrupt a couple years ago. And they had to make some drastic changes to alter what they were doing. And they were able to shift everything, focus on, instead of the 40 initiatives, What are the top 3 to 4 that really matter? And limiting the work in progress of the focus, and then turning the company around to be in the green. Another company here in the Tampa Bay area, I've been coaching over the last year, and they hit a $35 million valuation in a year and a half during a global pandemic. So when you start to look at what's possible, so much is possible. The final example I want to reference is Sharon Gurin, the culinary queen. She is here. I met her in Tampa a couple of years ago. I got into her Uber. I got in the backseat of her Uber. We started chatting. She said, Maria, my dream has always been to have my own TV cooking show. I want to have my own catering company, private chef services. I was like, well, why don't you just put a show up on YouTube for your cooking show and submit that to the TV networks? She's like, honey, I'm old. I don't know how to use YouTube. I was like, I tell you what, come over to my place in a couple of days. I'll shoot your cooking show. I'll put it up on YouTube. I just want to eat the food for free. And that's how I got a free private chef. And so Sharon and I started teaching her personal agility. The first year that we launched the business, she brought in over 6 figures. She went from working 5 jobs and barely getting by to clearing 6 figures. And then a year later, she landed a 6-figure client. She's now a private chef for a billionaire. And when you start to look at Agile applied in work or outside of work, the results are incredible. The sky's really the limit. Like, what's possible with Agile? Anything. I actually recently put together a presentation on Agile marketing. I was speaking at a conference 5 years ago. They didn't have any music entertainment. So they asked my buddy Nick and I if we would DJ or something, because we're sponsoring it as the Agile Marketing Academy. And he's like, Maria, you want to DJ? I'm like, okay, I don't know. And so picked up the basics, a little nerve-wracking, but kind of liked it. And I launched an international DJ career. So I've DJed in Fiji, New Zealand, Paris, Germany, on cruise ships. Like, it's absurd. Like, I've literally done agile training by day and DJed by night in like the streets of Thailand. And, you know, when you look at what's possible with Agile, absolutely anything. It's the framework of Scrum, most commonly used Agile approach. It helps you do twice the work in half the time. Why wouldn't you apply that to your life and your goals and your dreams? Yes, it works in business, and it works for anything else that you want to apply it to.
Amazing. I to be honest, I didn't know what the answer to that question was going to be. That was just amazing. That was cool. That was great.
Empirical data, empirical evidence. With Agile, we look at what are the actual things that are working, and let's show the real results. So yeah, so much is possible.
That's great. I love it. A DJ. That's I love it. Okay. Patty, why is agility so difficult to implement in an organization? So this is very true. It is difficult I mean, that's why we need coaches, right? People like you and Maria. So why is it, and where do people get stuck becoming agile?
Well, you're asking people to completely change the way they've been working all their lives. And, you know, this comes from my role as a teacher. You know, education, despite its best efforts, is still a very waterfall environment. It is traditional, top-down management focused on getting the right answer. And we never ask children to create new ideas or new things at all. It's just reproducing what somebody else tells them to reproduce. So it's like this manufacturing mentality. So when we ask newly minted working adults, you know, they just graduated from college, right, to go into an agile environment where they are asked to self-organize and self-manage and figure out the answer to a problem, that stuff is just not in their wheelhouse. So you have all these people coming into this organization, and all of a sudden, you know, you're gridlocked because it comes down to human behavior. Through my Montessori training, you know, I worked with preschoolers and elementary schoolers and really saw how behavior patterns form when we're very young. So what we do, what we say, our coping mechanisms, and we don't develop the ability to reason until we're about 6 or 7. So that's where we got to start. And that's why I'm so passionate about bringing Agile into education, because we need to start with those behaviors from when children are very, very young. Because if we start after that, right, as an adult, you know, all these behaviors that are cemented into our subconscious, it's really, really difficult to change them. It's a huge concerted effort. You know, multiply that by tens of thousands of people in an organization, and it's just a mess, right? So I think people get stuck because they're not used to being free to experiment. Whether the company is allowing employees to actually do the experimenting, like the boots on the ground, coming up with solutions, or, you're this employee, and do you feel safe opening your mouth and saying, I made a mistake, this is what I learned, or do we sweep it under the carpet? This is a stumbling block. And what this is, in a very simple nutshell, is a culture shift. Companies that are around for many years, like the one that I work for, hundreds of years, that culture is deeply embedded. So it becomes even more challenging to change. So my feeling is, we need this grassroots movement to help change the way we educate people, and that will trickle up into the working world, 10, 20 years later. So that's my passion.
Yeah, that's awesome. And like the perfect example is, we've been trained since we were probably 2 years old that multitasking is a strength, right? In Agile, it's not, right? It's like it's a no-no, right? And so it just makes things more simple not to multitask, right? I mean, that's what like makes us more efficient. But we've been told forever that if you're a good multitasker, then, then
make it.
Get things done, right? And it's just not true. It's just, I mean, scientifically, like it's not true, right? So it's amazing, and it's amazing how hard it is to transition, but it is, because I think we've been trained with things like that our whole life, right? Yeah, it's definitely a big light bulb that goes on off in your head when you realize how much more simple things can be. Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. So Maria, so you have you're a CEO of this company. You've talked about the Agile Marketing Academy and the Personal Agility Institute. What about your current company? How did you get into that? And also, when did you realize you wanted to have more than just a job? I think you talked about it a little bit, but we'd like to hear a little bit more when you realized, I just don't want to go in like 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week.
Yeah. So I was coaching a company downtown Chicago, working through another consultancy. And I just remember I wanted more than just even that, even just consulting. Downtown Chicago's cool. I felt good about what I did, but I wanted to make a bigger impact. And I thought, if I'm inside these four walls of this company, that's the only impact I can make. And so it actually took me a few years to my biggest roadblock at first was thinking of a company name, right? Like trying to brainstorm that. And Formula Inc. is what I came up with. So the idea behind it is that most everything in life is a formula. There's not a whole lot that's brand new we have to come up with. If we want to do something, someone's probably done something similar. So you just need to figure out what are the steps to take? What's the formula that they followed, and then start to follow the same steps. And then ink it in on paper, pen to paper. You have to actually take action for it to become a reality. And so when I first started, my consulting job in Chicago came to a close. We were transitioning over 70 teams from a traditional project management approach to using Scrum. And there was a team of 4 coaches, and we were starting to build up an internal coaching program. And so that was a year and a half in, and it was starting to be successful. So they said, well, Maria, we no longer need to renew your contract because now we have the internal coaches from the coaching program that you built. Now, as a consultant, that's good. That's a success, right? You should work yourself out of a job. But I had these mixed feelings. I'm like, wait, they don't need me anymore? But at this point, I was already traveling, speaking at conferences. I was only there maybe 50% of the time anyway. So I was like, that's fair. So you know what? Actually, that is a success. Like the coaching program is working. They feel like they can maintain that capability. They're not reliant on me forever. That's a win. And so I went out and I said, you know what? I had these other coaching contract opportunities and I turned them all down. I was like, nope, I'm going to start my own thing. Now, living downtown Chicago on Michigan Avenue on the top floor overlooking Lake Michigan is not cheap. And so I was thinking, what am I going to do? I have no regular income. And they wanted to jack up my rent. So interestingly enough, I actually got rid of my apartment in Chicago, got a storage unit. I had a couple suitcases, and I didn't get another place to live. I actually started traveling like a gypsy for 5 years. Now, is this extreme? Yes. Do I recommend it? Not necessarily. But what it did is it opened up the door for opportunity. And so I started looking at what can I do? Where can I go? How can I take away any barrier of where I come back to? And I was already traveling half of a month anyway, speaking at these conferences, leading some workshops and trainings. And it actually took me about 1.5 years to figure out what I was doing. So I went negative in my bank account 3 times at least. I was very stressed. I wasn't even sure. I completely ran out of money, and I ended up cashing in a life insurance policy because one of my jobs in college, I was a financial representative for Northwestern Mutual Financial Network. I learned about assets and liabilities. So I bought these whole life policies, which built up cash value. It's like, whoa, I left myself like some secret savings I forgot about. So I cashed in a life insurance policy and was able to get a little more runway to keep going. In fact, by the time I applied to be a certified Scrum trainer, I got turned down in the first round. And they told me, nope, you got to go, do all this other stuff. They actually told me I needed to go be a Scrum master for 6 months to make sure that they really knew that I understood Scrum and how it worked. I don't know if there's anything more insulting I could have been said. I'd been a Scrum master for 3 years. I moved on to do Agile coaching for 3 more years and was already doing training. I'm like, what part of my application did you not see? Like, I don't understand. And so I was really, really upset and frustrated. And I was at the end of my runway and I didn't have a lot of money. In fact, I had to wait 8 months to even reapply again. And so by the time I reapplied, I couldn't even afford to buy the ticket to fly to New Orleans and to go in front of the TAC review for the Scrum gathering. And so I actually had a friend that bought my ticket. I couldn't even afford to buy a hotel. So I had a flight out the next day at 6 a.m. I stayed up all night. I ended up kind of falling asleep on one of the couches in the lobby in order to get out. I couldn't even afford to pay the certification fee as a trainer when I had work lined up. So it was not an easy path, but I was very determined to get there and to be successful. And so it was a challenging journey, but I'm so glad that I did it because it was worth it in the end. But it took me about 1.5 years to figure out how to actually run a company and how to actually find something that I could help people with. And what I noticed is it was when I niched down. My background was in traditional project management. I led PMP training classes for the Project Management Institute. When you compare the traditional project approach from Agile, it's really hard to go back though once you do Agile stuff because it's a lot more collaborative and engaging by nature. And so I was like, okay, well, instead of just offering training or business consulting, that's way too broad. I need to niche down. So project management training, specifically Agile, specifically Scrum, specifically a certification. There we go. Now people want that. There's demand for that. And so getting really niche and focused was helpful, but it was a challenge. And it took a lot of time where I questioned a lot about myself. When I was turned down to become a certified trainer, I questioned if I should ever speak in public again, is how harsh the feedback was. I was like, oh, maybe I'm not good at this at all. Oh, they don't think I even know Scrum. How did I not convey that? I don't understand. What did I not do enough of? And I realized it wasn't about that. It was about staying persistent and taking away every reason they had to tell me no. I took away every reason that they had about, so it's not about this? Okay, well, what do I need to do to make up for that? Right? And so it was really just a lot of dedication and persistence. I mean, really in an Agile way, figuring out what's the next step from here. So fast forward and, not having a place to go back to allowed me to kind of hop from city to city, country to country. Formula Inc., we've done training and consulting around the world, Europe, Asia, throughout the US. Now we've converted all of our training to virtual live instructor-led courses and gotten incredible feedback from that. So, when you start to look at what is it that you want, what is your goal, I believe you can achieve anything. You just have to have clarity on what you want and be willing to put in the work and then take the steady steps to get there. And it's not always going to be, what is it? The entrepreneur path is not from here to success. It's, everything's going great. I think I'm going bankrupt. Oh, wait, no, I got this figured out. Nope, I'm failing. And then it's no, I think I got it. Oh, everything, the floor just got ripped out from underneath me. Oh, wait, no, I think I got this, right? And so that's the path. And so I've come to the conclusion, I think that's just life. It's this roller coaster. And if you can just really do what you can to enjoy the journey and look at what's the outcome I want, how can I get past these challenges? Again, it's applying Agile concepts to get through the roadblocks to get to the end results.
Yeah, I love that. An entrepreneur journey is difficult. Yeah, for sure. And that was a very inspiring story. Wow. That's bootstrapping for sure. I love it.
Bootstraps, all the bootstraps.
I know. I'm a bootstrapper too, though. I mean, I totally am. Okay, Patty, last question, then we're going to get to Lauren's career questions. But how do you get over the imposter syndrome and join the Agile community?
And I was on mute. There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
That happens all day long, doesn't it? Now, this is a big question, and this is something that I run into a lot with the people that I work with. Anytime human beings enter a new community, they're overwhelmed, right? Everybody else knows what's going on. Everybody else has been here longer. They're smarter than me. They know so much. when you walk into that room, you feel like you have to pretend that you're at that level, right? You don't want to be rejected. You got to pretend you're all good. We got this, and that's a hard mask to wear. It gets very, very heavy, but it takes courage. It takes courage to show up the first time. That's the hardest thing. But the second hardest thing is to show up the second time. And I think it's important to find people that you can connect with and people that will reach out to you. When I had been in Agile for a long time, I started out as an educator, and then I moved into small business and project management. But when I started joining Agile meetups in my community, I was intimidated because these people had 20 years of software development experience that I didn't have. So I felt like my experience didn't count. So when the leader of I'm thinking of this very specific meetup event, line up in order of your Agile knowledge or your Agile experience. And I put myself all the way at the end because that's where I saw myself. Mm-hmm. But, I kept showing up and I kept talking to people. I stayed humble. I read books. I kept asking questions, putting myself out there. And, a year later, I'm like, I'm at the front of the line now. First of all, I undersold my experience, but also I've gotten so much experience in this past year. And it was at that moment where it was like a full circle for me. And I turned around and I said, you know what? I need to help the people behind me because I know that I kept showing up, but not everybody has that courage or that has that hand reached out to them to say, come on, keep showing up. You can do this. So I decided to be that person, but it's really tough. And you just have to take one step at a time, be gentle with yourself and just ask questions and learn, be open. And eventually, like I said, you'll turn around and realize, wow, I've come so far. And that's what it takes, honestly.
Great story. I love it. Okay, so at the end of the podcast, I always have Lauren ask you guys some career questions that come from her fellow classmates. She's in college; she's graduating this year. From her, or we have a form on the website as well where people can submit their questions. But so I'm going to let her take over. And thanks, ladies, for joining us. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yeah. So this is one of my questions, but many people probably have this question for you guys as well. And I think you have some great insight to give. So what has been some of the biggest challenges you faced and how did you overcome them? Was it worth it? On the end, could you tell us a little bit more about that? And either one of you can go first.
Yeah, some of the biggest challenges, so many. I think if I were to try to think of what's one of the biggest challenges, I feel like people have constantly questioned my knowledge and capability as a person in this industry. And it started, I understood why when I was in my 20s, but as I got into my 30s and up to the upper 30s, it's like, okay, wait a minute. I clearly have demonstrated I know how to use Scrum. I know how to do this. I know how to do this, how this stuff works. And even just about maybe 4 years ago, I was about to teach a class. It was in Indianapolis. And the training coordinator for this private client had met with me the evening before. And he's like, hey, we'd just love to sync with you prior to the class. And as we're getting ready to leave, he was like, hey, I just have one final thing I just wanted to say. And he's like, we have a lot of senior people in this class. And I'm just a little concerned that they're not going to really listen to you. And he was very clearly implying, as a young female, the older gentlemen that had been in their job for 20, 30 years, were not going to take anything I said seriously. And I just looked at him and I said, thank you for letting me know your concern. I'm not concerned at all because I'm very confident that as soon as I begin to speak, that through my knowledge and experience and the stories, the real world examples and stories I can share, that my ability to answer their questions, there's not going to be any issue. So don't worry about it. I feel like we're going to be fine tomorrow. And what happened? Training class comes and I have spent years upon years refining my training content. And I do have the real world experience to back it up. And there was not a single issue. And I feel like I've run into that repeatedly. In fact, when I first started working in the corporate world, my hair was always pulled back in a slick back ponytail and I had a suit jacket on. I never wore my hair down, never had curls, never wore anything other than a suit because I just wanted to be taken seriously. And so, when you start to think about what are some of these challenges, how do you overcome them? People always have asked, Maria, what's it like to be a woman in the IT space? I'm like, well, there's not many of us, but here we are. And I never really thought about it as how did I achieve this as a woman? I'm like, no, how did I achieve this as a project manager? How did I achieve this as an agilist? That hasn't even crossed my mind because I'm just a person and I've never even thought about that. And so I'm just like, no, I just want to have the same merits. Like, let me manage a project. I've got a track record of success with projects and I'm confident in what I'm able to do. So what I would recommend to other people that might be facing this challenge is don't let that stop you. Don't let that slow you down. Do the best that you can. Show up and bring your A game every time and earn the respect. That's what I've done. And I think that worked pretty well.
And then Patty, you as well, if you could give your insight as well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I've faced that throughout my entire career. It doesn't matter what industry I've been in, what size business I've been in. There's always that there are always people that will try to make you feel like you're not good enough. And it's this constant battle, I think, especially as women, that we need to face. And it's a challenge. It's difficult, but you just have to keep showing up and keep doing the best you can. And like I said, eventually people start to see you as an authority or a thought leader, but it does take time, and you've got to just exercise that courage muscle. That's what I would say. Just keep going and find support systems that will help you on that journey. Because if you're by yourself, it becomes very difficult if you don't have somebody holding you accountable to keep going.
And I totally agree with both of you. And that actually angered me a little bit that Maria couldn't be herself. Like, she couldn't wear her hair down and, be her beautiful self because she was afraid she wouldn't be taken seriously. I'm older. And so stuff like that really bothers me. Yeah. But I just love that attitude. And I've heard that a lot from this question from very successful women in the IT field, that was kind of their attitude. Like, I'm ignoring that. I'm just going to keep going and be who I am and prove that I can do it. So it's awesome. Yeah.
You've got to. And I have a lot of tattoos, and I said to myself, this was 2014. I said, I will never take another job that does not accept me for who I am. Tattoos and all. You can't see them here today, but what I'm saying is I don't want to feel like I have to hide them. And if I have to hide them, then it's the wrong place for me.
Right. I agree.
And that takes courage to have that attitude, to turn down a job or to walk away from an opportunity. It takes courage. But you've got to be in the right frame of mind, or else you'll have a really difficult time saying no.
Yeah. One of the things I always look at is, what's the outcome that I want? And so for me, I didn't mind pulling my hair back. I didn't mind wearing a suit. I felt good about myself. I felt professional. And I was like, well, what's the outcome I want? And what can give me the slightest edge, the slightest advantage? And so I think, when you stay focused on the outcome, that can help us. Like, is this the environment I want to be in? Yes, no. Can I play this game? Oh, is this the game? What are the rules here? Right? Let me understand, what is it that I need to do to be successful here? And, even I had a funny conversation with a friend of mine the other day. I was on a conference call. It happened to be on speaker, and a friend that was there, and the conference call was running a little bit late. And afterwards, he's like, Maria, I am just so impressed with your patience. How do you handle someone mansplaining to you for that long? And I was like, oh, was he mansplaining to me? I didn't notice. That's just how people talk. I thought that's just how guys talk. I was like, oh, what I do is I just let people talk, get out everything they want about how their idea is the best and this, that, the other. And then I just let them get that out of their system. And I say, okay, so now what's the next step? And then I just kind of steer the conversation toward, all right, so what's the outcome? Great. All right, so I don't mind if guys feel like they need to explain things or feel like they're in control or in charge of the conversation. It's like, okay, cool. Is this the game? I can listen. All right, now I understand everything that's important to you. What do we do now? Right. And so it's always about taking back control of the situation and the environment and then adding the best value that you can. And I love how Patty said, consistently showing up. It's about consistently showing up.
Not letting people deter you from showing up, right? Because it's in your head.
Mm-hmm. You can play that game just as much as they can. You're valued on that, in the game as well. So I appreciate everything that you guys have said. And I know we're close to ending, but I want to thank you guys so much for giving your insight to, young women, but also just young people in general, because your voices are definitely valued to them. So thank you.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, so this has been a great conversation, and I can't believe the hour's almost up. We need to start winding down. I want to thank you both so much for joining us today. It's been a great show.
Yes.
And
thank you for the opportunity.
Patty and Maria, how can our audience get in contact with you and learn more about what you're doing?
Yep. If you want to connect with me, you can go to findmaria.com and you can click through to connect with me on my social media. If you can spell my name, you can find me online, Maria Matarelli, or just go to Find Maria and you can click through from there.
Yeah, that's actually a great website. I love it. It's you can contact me at patty@agilemindsetconsulting.com, or my website is agilemindsetconsulting.com. Either way.
I love that. FindMaria.com. I love it.
Okay. Radio interviews where I tried to spell Matarelli, MariaMatarelli.com. I'm like, this is not working. We need something different. So
I love it because I have my first and last name.com. I don't use it, but I can just imagine like trying to spell it out, just like you said, like it's just it's a long last name. So
I didn't even want to go there because I just knew.
Yeah, Patty's name.
My last name, nobody can say it. They can't even spell it. So my name is not my business.
Just a reminder to our listeners that although this show is live, we do record them and release them as a podcast. So please subscribe to The Learnist Show on Apple, iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, iHeartRadio, or your platform of choice. You can find the links to the show on our website, thelearnist.com. That is TheLearnist.com. And so that's it for now. We appreciate everyone who has supported us. We couldn't have done this without you. Make sure to follow us for updates and more on your platform of choice, and stay tuned on social media for exciting announcements on the show in the future.